She never looked back. That was the thing that undid him. A woman on a motorcycle, helmet still fogging with the coastal air of Lima, slid a pizza box across his threshold and turned away before he could speak, before he could even decide whether he wanted to. Manbach stood in the open doorway of his penthouse, a man who made boardrooms fall silent, who owned silence the way other men owned cars, and he watched the back of a stranger disappear into the elevator, taking something unnamed with her. Weeks later, when he finally understood what that something was, it would already be too late to give it back. Welcome back to Lyra Stories. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and turn on post notifications. Your support means everything. Now, enjoy the story. Studies show that people become more attracted to those who do not pursue them. Restraint signals value. In this story, Zainab's indifference becomes the most powerful force Manbach has ever encountered. Have you ever been drawn to someone precisely because they didn't chase you? Drop it in the comments. The evening Lima folded into itself, the way it did on the quieter side of Miraflores, where the ocean sat at the end of every street like a patient thought. Zainab Coulibaly was already 20 minutes behind schedule. She was not the kind of woman who ran late. Late was a luxury, and she didn't traffic in luxuries. She had 2 more deliveries after this one, a split shift that started again at 5 in the morning, and a savings goal that required her to think of money not as comfort, but as arithmetic. Every soul counted. Every minute was a variable she couldn't afford to waste. She pulled the motorcycle to the curb outside the Edificio Alcón, a building so clean it looked climate-controlled from the outside, and checked the order on her phone. Penthouse. Naturally. She didn't take the service elevator. The front desk let her through with the kind of mild disdain that expensive buildings reserve for people who work rather than live in them, and she rode up without looking at herself in the mirrored walls. She had long stopped checking mirrors mid-shift. There was nothing to adjust. She wore what she wore. She was who she was. The door opened before she knocked. He must have heard the elevator. Manbach Quan stood in the frame of his own door the way certain men occupy space, completely, without effort, as if the architecture had been designed around him. Broad through the shoulders. A jaw that looked carved rather than grown. He wore a dark sweater pushed to the elbows, and nothing about him suggested he'd been waiting, yet the door had opened before she knocked. Zainab held out the box. "Order for Quan," she said. Her Spanish carried the cadence of a woman who had learned the language like a tool rather than a pleasure, precise, functional, without ornament. He looked at her the way she would only later learn was unusual for him. Not with want, not yet, but with a kind of still attention, the way a man who controls most things responds to something he cannot immediately categorize. He took the box. She was already turning. "Wait." She paused, half-turned, her helmet strap still loose at her chin. "There is no change," she said. "It's exact." He had not been about to ask about change. He'd been about to say something else, though he couldn't have told anyone what. He closed his mouth. She left. The elevator doors closed on her back. He stood in his doorway for a moment longer than he should have. The next evening, the same order came through the dispatch system and landed on Zainab's route by rotation. She didn't think about it. She rode through the coastal dark, parked, went up, knocked. He opened the door immediately again. She handed over the box. He signed the receipt without looking at it. "You were faster tonight," he said. She blinked once. Traffic was light. She left. He ate the pizza standing at his window, watching the Pacific swallow the last of the city's light, and he thought, just once, just briefly, about the way she'd said traffic was light. Like a woman who notices everything and volunteers nothing. By the 4th night, the dispatch manager flagged the address as a preferred route assignment and quietly redirected it to Zainab's queue without her asking. She noticed on the 3rd day, said nothing. Assumed it was algorithm. Rode. By the 5th visit, Manbach opened the door in a jacket, which he had not done before. She noticed. She filed it. She said nothing. "Do you always work nights?" he asked. She looked at him steadily. "Do you always order pizza 5 nights in a row?" Something moved across his face. Not embarrassment. Closer to interest. "I've been busy," he said. "So have I," she replied and turned away. In his other life, the one the coastal apartment was a retreat from, Man Bok Kwan was not a man people questioned. He sat at the head of KHC Capital's Lima operations, managed private equity portfolios across South America, and kept a layer of corporate structure between himself and the kind of decisions that didn't survive daylight. He was not cruel. He was simply exact. He expected the world to arrive on schedule, perform its function, and leave without complication. Women, specifically, were not complications he entertained for long. He'd had relationships the way men like him always did: selected, curated, scheduled. Women who understood the parameters. Women who never asked where he'd been at 3 in the morning or why certain calls made the room temperature drop. None of them had ever turned away from him before he finished speaking. None of them had ever made him feel, standing in his own doorway, that he was the one interrupting something. He ordered again the following Monday. Zainab, for her part, was not thinking about him. She was thinking about the wire transfer she needed to complete by Thursday. Her mother in Bamako had a medical appointment, and the local clinic required payment up front. She was thinking about the rear brake on her motorcycle, which had been pulling slightly to the left and would need servicing before the weekend. She was thinking about the scholarship application her supervisor had forwarded her, a logistics management program at a university in Santiago, full funding, the kind of opportunity that appeared once and didn't wait. She was not thinking about the Korean man in the penthouse who looked at her like she was a calculation he couldn't finish. She was, however, aware of him. She was always aware of the things that didn't fit the pattern of a day. He was one of them. That was all. The shift where everything changed was not dramatic. It was raining. Lima's rain was rare and half-hearted, a coastal mist that couldn't quite commit to being weather. It fogged the roads and made the helmet visor useless. Zainab arrived at the Edificio Alcón 11 minutes late, her jacket soaked through at the shoulders, and she was already recalculating the rest of her night when the elevator doors opened and Man Bok was standing in the hallway, not in the doorway, but in the hallway, like he had come to meet her. He had an umbrella in one hand, which was absurd given that she was already inside the building. He looked at the umbrella, then at her. Something flickered in his face. She looked at the umbrella too. "It's raining," she said, because it was, and she wasn't sure what else to say. "I know," he said. "I heard your motorcycle was downstairs. I thought," he stopped, looked away briefly. "You should come in and dry off before you ride again." Zainab studied him for 3 full seconds. "I have 2 more deliveries," she said. "They can wait 10 minutes. "They cannot, actually." He said nothing. She handed him the box, and he took it, and she was already pressing the elevator button when he said, quietly, without theater, "I'll tip accordingly." She turned and looked at him directly for the first time, not the quick professional glance she'd offered every other night, but actually looked at him, at the steadiness in his face, at the way he was holding that ridiculous umbrella like he hadn't yet decided to feel embarrassed about it. "I don't need a tip," she said. "I need to finish my shift." She rode out into the mist. He stood in his hallway for a long time. That night, sitting at his desk with investment reports open and unread across 3 monitors, Man Bok did something he had never done in a professional context. He pulled up the delivery company's public business portal and made a standing reservation, same time, 3 nights a week, penthouse, paid in full in advance. He told himself it was convenience. 2 weeks passed in the rhythm of their arrangement, though neither of them would have called it that. She delivered. He opened the door. They exchanged a few sentences about the weather once, about Lima traffic twice, about nothing that mattered, and she left, and he watched the elevator doors close, and the night continued. But the 2 weeks had done something to him without his permission. He knew now that she kept her helmet on one hand when she knocked, never both, her right hand was always free. He knew she wore the same jacket every night, but it had been repatched at the left elbow, careful stitching, someone who repaired things rather than replaced them. He knew she never checked her phone while waiting for him to sign. He knew her stillness was not shyness. It was discipline. She was a woman made of discipline, and he, who understood discipline professionally and personally, had never been on the receiving end of it as rejection. She wasn't rejecting him. She simply hadn't made space for him yet. He wasn't sure which was worse. The moment that split everything came on a Thursday. Zainab had locked her motorcycle outside the building and was walking toward the entrance when a man, young, confident, the kind of Lima-born ease that came with a good family name, stepped out of a rideshare and nearly walked into her. He caught her arm to steady her, held it a beat too long, smiled at her. Sorry, he said, and switched to English when he caught something foreign in her expression. You all right? I really wasn't watching. Zainab looked at his hand on her arm until he removed it. I'm fine, she said. You sure? He tilted his head. He was good-looking and he knew it. Can I? I'm working, she said, and walked past him. From the 6th floor window, Manbach had been on a call, pacing. He had watched all of it. He told himself the tightness in his chest was irritation at the interruption of his call. He put the phone down before the other party finished speaking, which he had never done once in 11 years of business. When Zainab came up, he opened the door and said nothing. She handed over the box. He signed. She turned. Who is that? He said. She paused. Who is what? The man outside. He touched your arm. Zainab turned fully. She looked at him with an expression he had not seen before on her face, not coolness, not the professional neutrality she maintained, but something quiet and careful, like she was deciding whether to answer him or to tell him, gently, that the question was not his to ask. She chose the latter. That's not your business, she said. He knew she was right. That was the part that burned. She left. He locked the door and stood with his back against it in a $12 million apartment and felt, for the first time in his adult life, like a man standing outside something he couldn't buy his way into. He stopped ordering pizza. For 4 days, her route passed through Miraflores without stopping at the Edificio Alcón. She noticed the absence only because her route was shorter now, and shorter was better, and she told herself that was the only reason she noticed. On the 5th day, she was eating lunch near the seafront, a bench, a paper bag, 20 minutes between shifts, when a black car pulled to the curb and Manbach stepped out. He was in a suit this time. Full weight of it. The kind of suit that didn't ask permission. He saw her immediately. She saw him see her. He walked over and sat down on the bench beside her without asking. Not beside her the way a stranger sits, with space between them, but the way a person sits when they have decided the space is shared. You looked for me, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, he said. He didn't perform casualness. That was the thing about him she found herself cataloging despite herself. He didn't perform. Why? He was quiet for a moment. Looked out at the ocean. Because I handled that conversation poorly and I don't handle things poorly. She turned to look at him. That's not an apology, she said. No, he agreed. It's an explanation. The apology is that I overstepped. What you do with your time and who touches your arm is not he stopped. Tried again. I had no right to ask. Zainab considered this. She folded the paper bag from her lunch into a careful square, which she tucked into her jacket pocket. Littering was not something she did. Why did you stop ordering? She asked. He looked at her. Because I wasn't ordering for the food. The ocean moved. A cyclist passed. Lima did what Lima did, went on, indifferent, enormous. I know, she said quietly. He waited. I have a scholarship interview in Santiago next month, she said. Not an answer. Not a non-answer. Just a fact she'd never offered him before. A thread left on the bench between them. He looked at it like a man who understood what threads cost. Tell me about it, he said. And she did. And the 20 minutes became 40, and the 40 became an hour, and neither of them looked at a phone. Quick pause. If this story has you hooked, tap like and drop your thoughts below. Now, back to the story. The scholarship interview was in 26 days. Zainab knew this the way she knew the rear brake pull and the Thursday wire transfer as a fixed point around which everything else was organized. The logistics management program at Universidad de Santiago was the kind of opportunity that didn't repeat. Full funding. 2 years. A credential that would pull her out of the delivery circuit permanently and into something she had been building toward since she left Bamako at 19 with one bag and a particular kind of stubbornness that her mother called pride and she called survival. She had not told anyone in Lima about it. Not her roommate. Not her dispatch supervisor, who would quietly panic about replacing her. Not the man who now appeared in her life in ways that were no longer accidental. She had told Manbuk. She turned that fact over in her mind during the long night shifts, the way you turn a stone to find what's underneath carefully, without expecting anything. She wasn't sure why she'd told him. Perhaps because he had listened in a way that felt structural. Like a building that could take weight. He hadn't offered encouragement in the hollow way people do when they want to seem supportive. He'd asked questions. Specific ones. About the program's thesis requirements, about the funding conditions, about whether her work history and logistics qualified as relevant experience. She had answered all of them. And in answering, she had understood her own application better. That bothered her. The usefulness of him bothered her because useful things became necessary, and necessity was a form of vulnerability she could not afford. Manbach did not tell her he had already looked up the program. He'd pulled the university's official page within an hour of their bench conversation, read the faculty profiles, reviewed the admission statistics, and quietly, through a contact he maintained at a Chilean trade association, confirmed the program's industry reputation. It was exceptional. It would take her far. He sat with that information for 3 days before he understood what it meant, that she had a trajectory, and it pointed away from Lima, and he had inserted himself into her life at a moment when she was already preparing to leave it. He was not a man given to sentiment. He had walked away from more situations than he had stayed for. He understood exit strategies intuitively, professionally, personally. He should have recognized this as one and behaved accordingly. Instead, he called her. She picked up on the third ring. He could hear the city behind her, the motorcycle idling, the coastal wind. "Are you riding?" he asked. "Not yet. Stopped for fuel. I want to take you somewhere Sunday." Not a delivery. Just somewhere. A pause. Not hostile. Measuring. "Why?" she asked. "Because you've been standing in my doorway for 2 months, and I've never seen where you stand when it's yours." Another pause. Longer. "Sunday," she said. And hung up. He picked her up at 9 in a car that was understated for him, dark, clean, no driver. She noticed the absence of a driver. A man like him could have had 3. He took her to Barranco, Lima's oldest creative district, where the streets were painted in colors that argued with each other, and the buildings leaned like old men sharing a secret. She had been there once before, briefly, on a delivery. She had not seen it. He showed her the Bridge of Sighs first, the old wooden footbridge over the ravine, where the city dropped away into a gully of eucalyptus, and the sound was different, quieter, like a parenthetical in the middle of Lima's noise. She stood at the railing and looked down. "It's smaller than I expected," she said. "Most things are," he replied. She looked at him sideways. He was looking at the ravine. They walked. He knew the district in the way a private man knows the places he visits alone, not with tour guide authority, but with a quiet familiarity, pointing at things that meant something to him without explaining too much. A mural he liked. A cafe that made the coffee the old way, boiled in a pot, brought in a glass. A bookstore so narrow you had to enter sideways. She bought a book. He watched her choose it, running her fingers along the spines, reading the back covers with a small focused frown, replacing 3 before settling on 1. "What is it?" he asked. She showed him the cover. A Malian author. Essays on displacement and belonging. "Do you feel displaced?" he asked. It was not a small question. He asked it anyway. She considered it as she paid for the book. "I feel in motion," she said finally. "Displacement sounds like something that happened to you." "I chose to move." He was quiet for a moment. "There's a difference." "Yes," she said. "There is." They had coffee. She drank hers without sugar, which he noticed and did not comment on. They talked for 2 hours about things neither of them would have predicted, about the architecture of Bamako, which she described with a precision that made it visible, about the year he'd spent in Busan before Seoul, before Lima. before he became the version of himself that wore suits and never explained his schedule. She asked him questions the way she did everything else, directly, without softening them to be polite. "What are you afraid of?" she asked, over the second coffee. He looked at her. "Everyone's afraid of something," she said. "You just seem like someone who's decided not to be." "That's different from not being," he said. "So, what is it?" He turned the glass in his hands. "Irrelevance," he said finally. "Being a man who controlled everything and left nothing." She nodded slowly. Did not rush to comfort him. Did not tell him that was unlikely. Just received the information and held it, which was, he was beginning to understand, her particular form of care. "That's a real thing to be afraid of," she said. He breathed out. "Yes." The Sunday became a pattern. Not every week she had shifts. He had calls that 8 days whole, but enough. Enough that Lima began to rearrange itself around a new geography. The bench near the seafront, the Barranco bookstore. A restaurant in Cirquillo where she introduced him to a Malian-Peruvian fusion the owner had invented over 30 years and served without a menu. He ate everything she put in front of him without hesitation, which she noticed and respected. He was learning her in the way he learned markets, slowly, completely, without announcing what he knew. He knew she called her mother every Tuesday at 8. He knew she kept a small notebook in her jacket where she tracked her savings, updated in pencil, never pen, because pen was too permanent for numbers that changed. He knew she laughed rarely, but when she did it was sudden and complete, no performance, just the thing itself, and it hit him every time like something he hadn't braced for. He had not told her what he felt. He was not sure he had the language for it, or that language was the right tool. He had spent his life using words as instruments, precise, purposeful, controlled. What he felt when she walked into a room was not something instruments could measure. The complication arrived on a Wednesday, as complications often do. His name was Rafael Torres. A Lima-born investor from a Chilean banking family, charming, unhurried, the kind of man who wore confidence like a second skin and whose interest in women was genuine and entirely self-serving. He had met Zainab at a cultural fair in Miraflores she'd stopped at between shifts, and he had not made the mistake of touching her arm. He had simply talked to her. And she had talked back, because she was not a woman who was rude without cause. Rafael had gotten her number by the simple method of asking for it. She had given it with the neutrality she gave most things, not warmly, not coldly, just factually. He was interesting enough. She was not interested. These were different things. But Rafael texted, and then called, and then appeared at the cultural fair again the following week, which she did not think was coincidence. She mentioned it to Manbach on a Sunday, not because she owed him the information, but because she had begun to tell him things that were real, and this was real. She watched his face as she told him. She had expected him to be controlled. He was controlled. But the control was visible now. She could see it being assembled, piece by piece, behind his eyes, the way you watch a man make a fist he doesn't intend to open. "What did you tell him?" Manbach asked. "I didn't tell him anything particular," she said. "I'm not interested." "Then why mention him?" She looked at him steadily. "Because you and I have not had a conversation about what this is. And until we do, you don't have a claim on my information. I'm giving it freely." The fist behind. She looked at him. "You're not going to say anything else?" He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a folded piece of paper. She opened it. It was a printed page from the university's faculty directory. One name was circled in pen, a professor of supply chain methodology who had published a paper Zainab had cited in her application. "She'll be on the panel," he said. "She likes when candidates have read her older work, not just the recent papers. The 2019 monograph. It's better." Zainab stared at the paper, then at him. "How do you know she'll be on the panel?" "I know people," he said simply. She folded the paper and put it in her folder, carefully, between her reference letters. "Manbach," she said. "Yes. Don't fall apart while I'm gone." His jaw moved. For a man who controlled his face professionally, he was losing the battle at the corners of his mouth. "I won't," he said. She turned and walked toward the gate. She did not look back. She never looked back. He stood and watched her go and felt, For the second time, the particular helplessness of watching a woman disappear through a door she had opened herself. She got the scholarship. She called him from Santiago before she called anyone else. He picked up on the first ring. "I got it," she said. He said nothing for a moment. Then, "I know. You couldn't have known yet. I knew before you left." She stood in the hotel corridor and leaned against the wall and felt something press against the inside of her chest like a door being pushed from within. "I leave in 8 weeks," she said. "I know that too." "That doesn't," she stopped. Started again. "That doesn't scare you?" "It terrifies me," he said. "That's not the same as it changing anything." She slid slowly down the wall until she was sitting on the floor of a Santiago hotel corridor with her blazer still on and her folder in her lap. And she held the phone and said nothing, and he said nothing, and the line between them held like a bridge over a ravine. Old, worn, and bearing weight. 8 weeks moved the way urgent things do, fast on the surface, geological underneath. He did not ask her to stay. She knew he wouldn't. It was one of the things she had come to understand about him. He would not ask her to diminish herself. Not because he didn't want to, she could see the wanting in everything he didn't say, but because he understood, at the core of himself, that the thing he loved about her was precisely the thing that was leaving. Loved. She had not used that word, even internally. She used it now, sitting on her motorcycle outside the Edificio Alcón for the last time as a delivery rider. She'd given her notice the week before, and let it settle. He was waiting in the hallway again. No umbrella this time. She walked toward him carrying only her helmet. "I have something for you," he said. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a key card and a document, a lease agreement for an apartment in Santiago, furnished, paid for the full duration of her program. She looked up. "I'm not asking you to take anything from me," he said carefully. "The program is yours. Santiago is yours. This is just a place to stand while you build the rest." She looked at the key card for a long time. "This is too much," she said. "It isn't enough," he said. "But it's what I can offer without overstepping." She raised her eyes to his. They were standing very close now, close enough that the coastal wind moved between them like a shared breath. "Come to Santiago," she said. He blinked. "Not to manage it," she said. "Not to watch over it. Just come. Visit. Be there sometimes." "You're asking me to follow you," he said. "I'm asking you to show up," she said. "There's a difference." He took her face in both hands very carefully, the way you hold something that does not belong to you but has been trusted to you for a moment, and she let him, and the distance she had kept for months dissolved not in a rush, but in a quiet release, like a held breath finally given permission. He visited Santiago 7 times in 2 years. On the 8th visit, he arrived without luggage and with a question he asked on a bench near the university's east garden, where a jacaranda tree was doing its best impression of purple and the afternoon had the quality of a held note. She said yes before he finished the sentence. He would later claim she interrupted him. She would say she was efficient. Both were true. They were married in a small ceremony in Barranco, the Bridge of Sighs, the old wooden one, smaller than expected. Her mother came from Bamako, healthy and radiant, and cried through everything. His mother came from Seoul and said very little and held Zainab's hands for a long time at the end of the night, which said everything. 14 months later, a daughter. They named her Suya Aminata Kwan, 2 worlds, 1 name, the specific kind of miracle that happens when 2 people refuse to be what they were expected to be and choose, instead, what they could not have imagined. Zainab finished her degree. She finished it first, actually. She always finished things. Manbach stopped ordering pizza. He cooked instead, badly at first, then less badly, and she sat at the kitchen table on weekend mornings with her monographs and her coffee without sugar and watched him fail at something without it destroying him, and thought, this is what it looks like when someone is not afraid of being seen. She wrote it in her notebook. In pen, this time. Some things don't change. If this story pulled you in, comment your thoughts and stay subscribed, there's more coming.